just text me and I'll call you back. Okay, my name's Mike.
Hi guys, this is Atco. Today I went to a car show in Winfield, Maryland, about 25-30 miles to the west of Baltimore. And they always have a really good show here. I think it was about 300 or so cars on the show. And it was just perfect because it was about 80 degrees and it was a little bit cloudy, so this one just worked out perfect, staying as long as you want to stay and a good time. Now when I go to these shows, yeah, you always see plenty of the Chevy 55, 56, 57, and there's always plenty of Mustangs, and there's always plenty of Corvettes, and they're all great cars. What I thought I'd do with this one, rather than just going through one after another of all these cars, I just picked out the ones either they made something to me or ones that I haven't seen too often. So I thought I'd show you. Now here's one of the first ones. This is a Plymouth 1962. I remember my grandmother had one of these. I thought this is about the ugliest car I've ever seen, and I still think it too. I remember the dash, her sitting in her car. It's a good car. She never had any problems with it. Good Mopar car, but it was ugly. And now today, though, because they're ugly, they're very collectible now. People like them because they're different. This next one is a Ford 1957 wagon. And what's important to this one for me is my mom had a job to sell appliances to the dealers, and she'd go there and show them to the managers there and see if they would start to sell their appliances. She didn't have this job too long. I think it didn't work what they were trying to do. This I think is like a Buick, and this is probably in the 1930s, maybe 36, 38, something like that. What made this interesting to me is if you look on the right side where the doors are, it's got what they call suicide doors. You had to open one from the back forward, and then from the one in the back you had to open that from the forward back, so that the doors would come out mirrored kind of, and they called that suicide doors because when you'd open especially that back door, a car could come by real quick and you hit that thing and just rip the door right out. They stopped doing that after 10 years ago or so, but from a collectible standpoint they're kind of cool. Now this one is a 56 DeSoto, and you don't see too many DeSotos at the car shows. This was what makes this interesting for me is that this was the first car that my dad had when I was growing up. My dad had this car, and I was just a couple years old at the time. We had it till 1962. But I can remember that most of that is just, sleeping in the back seat because I was pretty young. So this is the dash of the 56 DeSoto. Now we also have plenty of hot rods here too. It's almost 50-50. This one, I've never seen this one before. Pretty odd. I wouldn't say it's all that cool, but it's different. So I had to take a picture of that one. Now this one is, in the 60s they had a lot of these little economy cars that were cheap to buy, and they had a Chevy called a Chevy 2. It was a cheap car to have, and most of them would all be little 6-cylinder engines. But back then in the 60s, you could order anything you wanted on your car, no matter what it was supposed to have for it. You could put a big engine into one of these little cars if you wanted. And some people would. And the thing is, you'd look outside and you'd see one of these little cheap cars like this, and you sure wouldn't expect it to do much. And you throw a big engine in that thing all of a sudden, and it's just like a muscle car, It looks like this is what this guy had done with his. He got this one to look perfect to be a little economy car, and then he dumped a big engine into it, so it would throw you away if you were driving around in that one. It'd blow you away. Now this is one I don't see too much of the European cars, but this one I think is a British car called Wally, something like that. I've never seen it, never seen anything like that. I just thought it was cool. You know, Wally, maybe you guys heard about it. Can't have been a very strong car, because look at that, it said 14 horsepower on it, so I don't think it was a muscle car. And I had to take this one here. This was probably a Buick or any of those cars from the 1930s. Have what they call a rumble seat, and it looked like you're opening the trunk of your car, but you actually pull it up and you could put somebody in a seat in the back outside of the cab of the car. I guess they were popular for a while. This was one I saw. This looks like a 55 Dodge. There's nothing fancy about it, but I don't see too many of these around, so I saw that one and I liked that one. This one, I just like this too. One of the guys I knew when I was growing up, he had one of these Ford 1963 Galaxies. Beautiful car, a beautiful dash, and yeah, I'd like to have that today. This is an old truck from the 50s. I just thought, I've seen these before. A couple of companies had these. Just really cool looking car. Now here's a 1956 Ford, and this one definitely was kind of hot rodded up from the 50s. It's got just about every chrome thing you can put in it, the flames and all that stuff. I thought that looked pretty cool. And back in the 50s, you pull into a drive-in and they'd come in and give you your burgers and cokes, whatever you need, and you stay in the car and they'd bring it right to you. And it's one of them big old boats here. There's a Chrysler Imperial. Beautiful, but it's a boat. Man, look at the size of that. And geez, look at that dash. Is that something? Wow. Now here's something. They had in the early 70s, we had some little kind of economy cars. Chevy came out one called a Vega, and Ford came out their Pinto. They were kind of cute. Most of them wore out pretty well. The rusted was bad on them. And with the Vega here, they were, I think the engines were made with aluminum, and they had a lot of problems with the heat, warping and all that stuff. And you don't see many of these that hung around. And this one's not in perfect shape, but it's just rare to find one of these Vegas at the show. I mean, it's not all that bad shape. And it's pretty cool. It's a good car to have. I like this one. Now this was a 1953 Mercury. But look at the style of that. You know, the cars were changing a lot from the early 50s to later 50s. They really changed the style. And this was one of the earlier ones that came out. And this Mercury from 53 is a really sharp looking car for that age. Look at that dash. Man, that's cool. And then finally, I'm going to show you this another one of these huge boat cars back around 1960. This is a Lincoln Continental, but this thing is just huge. Look at it, just dash too is huge. I mean, it's so wide, and whew, man, you could probably make 3 new cars out of the metal that's made out of that one back in 1960. So that's pretty much it. That's the main things that I had, and I looked at everything that was there. I probably spent a couple hours in the show, and always planning up to a few people I run into, and always like talking to everybody. So anyways, that's what I did today. Had a good time looking at all the cars, and I hope you guys are doing well. For now, this is Atco signing off.